Hello and welcome to the Story Behind the Stories, your weekly look at the pages of the Neepawa Banner Press. Thank you very much for taking a little bit of your time this week and spending it right here with us on NAC TV. I'm Eoin, Devereux news reporter with the Banner Press and the permanent temporary host of the Story Behind the Stories, welcoming you once again. Joined this week by Casper Wehrhahn. Casper, great to have you here this week.
Good to be here once again to go through another paper.
Mainly because you did most of the heavy lifting this week in terms of the articles, so it's good to have the person that actually did the effort and did the time and work to track this down to be able to share some of the details behind it.
Indeed, yeah, there certainly is a lot to talk about this week. As Owen said, a couple stories that I did some work on, so eager to go through those.
Most definitely, but before we do that, we're just going to very quickly discuss the front page of this week's edition of the Banner Press. Very appreciative to Leah Sumner, who sent us this picture over the long weekend of the sunrise, I believe, happening just recently while they were doing some harvesting, and so got the swather out and doing some work just a little close to Neepawa. Thank you very much, Leah. Very appreciative of that. Because we had several stories in this week's edition, but we didn't have anything that has that sort of visual sort of catch. That's the thing about a newspaper. You always want to make sure that front page grabs your attention and reels you in. Now, you can either do that with a very intriguing headline, a significantly important news story, or a visual component of it. So, fortunately, we didn't have that breaking news, shocker story this week, but we did have a great visual, and we appreciate Leah Sumner for sending that to us so that we could share that as well with you. Inside the pages, though, we've got some great information and some great news going on. And as always, it starts near the beginning. Page 2 of this week's edition of the paper. Casper, you were able to track down some information on a new business in Neepawa that is really starting to sort of catch a lot of people's eyes, I think.
Yeah, so some people have likely seen, if you've been in and around Neepawa's downtown here, a lot has been happening at the former home of the Neepawa Banner Press, just across the street here from us. New paint outside, that happened quite a while ago, and it is the home of Stellar Apparel. So I was able to meet with the owner and manager there, a mother-daughter duo, Annika and Tammy Atke, and talk with them a bit about their business and what they're all about. They held their grand opening on September 29th and 30th. So I jaunted down there, had a short little walk over there and spoke with them. It's a nice looking place. It's a boutique for men's and women's clothing, and they carry a variety of stuff, actually. Like they've even got a little bit of workwear there, which is really great. Means we will likely have to drive a little bit less to get that sort of thing, which is absolutely fantastic. I mean, we want a lot more people, as many people as we can, staying in town to shop or coming downtown if they're visiting or coming through to shop here as well, because it's good for our economy and helps businesses grow. But yeah, fantastic space, fantastic talk with them. You can learn a little bit more about them and how they got into this and how they came up with the name of the business in that story. But talking a bit about the space itself, I wanted to touch on that, because having been in there as a reporter for the Neepawa Banner Press and then going in there now, it is so completely different. It's just got a whole different vibe. It's got fresh paint inside, fresh flooring, and like the back room there, Owen, I remember it was just 2 rooms in the back.
Yep.
And now it's been separated into 3. So it's just the little different things in there that they've put a lot of work into and changed to really fit with what they're going for here, which is pretty cool to see.
Most definitely. And again, I was going to comment on that as well. It is the former Neepawa Banner, and then a little later on, Neepawa Banner and Press building. So the renovations that were done, just seeing the picture, it just amazes me how much it looks different. And it's the interesting thing as well, Casper, this just popped into my head as you were speaking about that. Just the colors, the tones and all that. Consistent viewers of the show know I worked for several years in Brandon on radio, and I used to work for CKLQ, Star FM. And while I was there, they did a complete renovation of the entire structure of the building. Because there were times we were working with like scaffolding showing, and all the asbestos was falling on our heads as we were doing the news. So it was all of that type of stuff. And once it was all said and done, it was professional, it looked amazing, and it looked, quite honestly, a lot like this, except take out the sweaters and put in some recording equipment. But it very much reminded me of the renovation that was done at CKLQ building in Brandon. And that is a big deal. I mean, it's wonderful to see businesses sort of chime in, put the money in there, and make those types of improvements, because it helps with personnel as well. It helps with everybody feels pretty good about going to work sometimes, and it's great to see, and gets customers, I'm sure, in a buying mood.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And one of the things that I noticed in there that they talked a little bit about as well is that when I was looking around, just biding my time until they were ready for interview, because they were showing their family actually a tour of the store, because they were visiting here as well. And I noticed that there was a lot of things, well, everything actually, that I had not recognized, brands, whichever. And yeah, it is genuinely like unique brands that I hadn't seen anywhere else. And it sounds like they're hoping to use that to their advantage, as much Canadian-made stuff as possible as well, to really draw people in and give it sort of that unique angle that you won't find in big cities.
That's right. That's very important. The big city aspect of it as well, very important. For the longest time, you really only had certain options. You went to a couple of the franchise that we have here in Neepawa and bought fast fashion, as it were, something that may not have the lasting staying power or durability of something handmade or something like that. It's a lot of processed stuff. Or you had to go to Brandon, you had to travel all the way to Brandon. Not everybody has a car, and not everybody has the means to be able to do that. Or you had to purchase online from eBay or Amazon or any types of things like that. And that's taking money out of your community when you do things like that. So to have a local business that is going to have these types of things, not just for ladies, not just for men, just for people, just in general, everyone, it's going to hit every genre, every individual, every category you need to hit, which is nice. When you're in a city, you sort of take that for granted. And in the smaller communities, that's a big deal. So I hope that you will, once you read the article, you head down there, you support them. Always appreciate sort of, and if you want to give a shout out, oh yeah, the Banner Press sent me, that's just a little pat on the back for us and trying to sort of showcase some of our locals like this. So if you want to find out a little bit more, again, you can find it on page 2 of this week's edition of the Neepawa Banner Press. All right, let's settle in a little further into the paper. A very great honor for a individual from Neepawa, Blair Chapman. And I got to admit, I was going through some archive newspapers a little earlier today, and I ran across a couple stories about Blair and this organization in the past. It was like, it refreshed my memory. It's like, oh yeah, he's kind of been a part of this for a long time, hasn't he? But let you fill in the details for those who don't have the access to the archives like we do.
Yes, for sure. Yeah, Blair Chapman is a very familiar face in the community for a variety of reasons, but this particular reason is in relation to music, of course. He's got a long record via his teaching, etc., with choirs and whatnot in the school. But outside of that as well, there's been choirs in Neepawa that he has been involved with for the area. And this particular honor that he has right now with the Westman Youth Choir is that he has recently been appointed a director for the choir, and they're preparing for a tour which is actually going to be kicking off, I believe it was this weekend, with a performance in Neepawa on the 16th. It's a big choir too. Oh my God. I was talking to him and I was just blown away by the sheer size of it. It has like 53 people involved, and that's just because that's the cap set by the seats on the bus. This particular year, he said there was like, I think, 80 to 90 people who auditioned, so very tough choices had to be made by the sounds of it by the people who were trying to narrow that down to that 53. But yeah, he's been working with the choir group for a while now. He sent students to be involved with the choir in the past, but of course now is in the directing role. And he has been working with them at camps related to the choir to prepare them for the tour, and he says they're just doing absolutely fantastic. He had a really tough time helping narrow people down for some solos that are going to be coming up, and it just sounds like it's going to be a great time, and congratulations to him. This is a fantastic sort of feather in his cap, so to speak.
Oh, it's wonderful that one of our own locally has been acknowledged in this sort of way. They see the value of what he's been contributing over the years to the choir and this natural progression into a leadership role, and sort of continuing to showcase that leadership for the next generations of young performers. So I do hope that you'll take a moment or two and share in that information and learn a little bit about it. And again, maybe sort of check things out. As Casper said, the choir will be here, so hopefully you'll go down and see it for yourself, or hear it for yourself, we should say. All right, now we're going to get into some of the more technical stuff that's going on right now. These are the fun stories we've covered right now. Now it's the meat and potatoes. Now it's the liver and onions, as it were. You know, nobody wants it, but you gotta chow down on it every once in a while. And we're going to talk about a recent council meeting, and there was one very interesting thing I took from it. It was discussion from Councillor Daryl Gerard to the rest of the council and the mayor about exploration of the Housing Accelerator Fund. That's a national program that was part of the 2022 federal budget. But again, you know how federal politics runs sometimes. Everything's got to be redone and done again, and then done again, and then put on a different piece of paper and done again. It's finally come to fruition, though, recently, so that communities can sign up for it and perhaps get some support. The Housing Accelerator Fund, in its most basic of terms, is the feds are going to be giving us money to build houses. That sounds pretty good, especially for a community like Neepawa that desperately needs it. Even still to this day, definitely needs a little bit more housing to enable to help those that have been coming to our community over the last 5 to 10 years. All right, now, how they do that is that money is actually specifically going towards the infrastructure. All the little bits that you don't see as you're driving down the street. The water, the sewer. Well, actually, you do see it because they talk about the roads as well, so you do see a little bit of it. So that money's going to be going towards water, sewer, and roads. A big part of housing are these little facets that maybe you don't give too much thought to. And they are expensive as well. So Daryl Gerard is hopeful that if Neepawa is accepted, they still have to go through the process. They still have to put in their application and have their application accepted by the federal government. He's optimistic that they'll be able to get another $4.9 million from the federal government in order to put into housing, new housing, right here in Neepawa. And that's a big deal. Nearly $5 million that we don't have to spend on housing. Hey, sign me up. Most definitely sign me up for that, because that means tax base, isn't as it isn't as bad as it could be. Every year taxes seem to go up just a little bit more. Housing taxes and all that seem to go up just a little bit more. That's just the reality of life in a community. But to be able to get some money in support of that would be fantastic. I actually cite in the story as well a couple larger communities, much larger communities, that have already benefited from this. London, Ontario actually is the very first community that has been accepted through this program just last month. They're getting $74 million for 2,000 new homes. And then Vaughan, Ontario as well, recently received $59 million to incentivize these new housing constructions. So obviously, we're not as big as London, Ontario. We're not quite as large as Vaughan, Ontario. So, we're not going to get that check for $74 million, unfortunately. But 4.9 still goes a long way. I don't know how many houses this would help build, but quite honestly, even every new house in Neepawa helps the community to continue its prosperity for decades to come. So, of course, I could be wrong. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we should just spend it all on lottery tickets.
Woo!
Yeah.
Surely one of us will win.
We're due. Big winners.
No, you're absolutely right, though. Yeah, it's very important to not only have the upkeep on the roads and the water and sewer and expansions on any of those as we progress, but to have that new housing available because we are growing.
Mm-hmm.
And, likely right now we do have people that are, as a family, living together for whichever reason, maybe not able to get their own place right now, just due to availability or what have you. And as we keep growing, we do need that housing to keep people in the town or moving to our town so that we can keep growing.
That's right. Because again, I'll use myself as an example on this. Even 30 years ago, 25 years ago, mid-90s, I was a young man of probably in and around your age, Casper, and I was working odd jobs, just little bits here and there, but rent was affordable. And in fact, I could have most likely gotten a loan at that time to purchase a home, even though I wasn't working sort of the quote-unquote career jobs that most people think you need to have to be able to afford a home and all those sorts of things. But as years progressed on, times changed, the housing market changed, and the availability of housing, not just in Neepawa, but throughout Canada changed, and that skyrocketed the price on a national level. So even with inflation, I'm not gonna tell you a number, but I make more now, definitely, than I made in the 90s. I've been able to save more than I did in the 90s. And I think my credit rating is a little bit better than it was. Well, it's definitely better than it was in the 90s. But at the same time, I think it would be more difficult for me to purchase a house now than it would have been for me in 1998. And that is ridiculous, and that is crazy, and that is something wrong with the way the system is structured. Part of it has to do with the government, part of it has to do with the business, but a part of it has to do with availability as well. New housing starts over the last decade on a national level have continued to increase, but the slope has sort of slowed down a bit. Not as many as being built as there were 15, 20 years ago. So anything from a national level, from a provincial level, any way, shape, or form, something can come through that can help build new houses, I think is a big plus. But, I'm going to get off my soapbox right now on that. I went off on a bit of a tangent. Some of you tune in each and every week to see me do that. Some of you flip the channel when I do. Hopefully you're back. Hopefully if you did, you're back now because I'm done. So let's get back into some of the good stuff that's going on here right now. I say good stuff, but at the same time, it connects up with the housing issues as well that we just talked about. I have a story in this week's edition. Kinsman Courts 2 very generously gave a donation of $500 to the Salvation Army Neepawa Community Ministries Food Bank. I always sort of forget, quite honestly, which one I should officially refer to it as, because they did have that sort of split, that separation there. but they're still in the same building type thing, Casper.
Yeah.
So I'll just say Neepawa Food Bank. I'll just go with Neepawa Food Bank right now just to be safe. They gave the Neepawa Food Bank a donation of $500 recently, some money that was raised from their Thanksgiving supper that occurred last long weekend. Wonderful to see the patrons and the staff of Kinsman Courts 2 see the value of the food bank and want to give back to them like that. And it's a very good news story in that way, but it also gets you thinking about, God, more and more people are having to use the food bank in Neepawa, in every community. So as we go into the holiday season, hopefully you will think of that and contribute maybe some non-perishable food items. Or very importantly, we did a story about this earlier this year, and I was educated on it to a degree, about household items. That's a big need when it comes, like toilet paper, tissue paper, paper towels, these types of cleaning products, those types of things are a big need. So if you can contribute in any way, shape, or form, I know things are tough, but if you're able to help out, that's always appreciated. So once again, thank you to KK2 and the people who saw the value and need to support the food bank and stepped up in that way. We love sharing those stories in that way, but quite honestly, we wouldn't mind if we never had to write one of those stories ever again, because everybody's got 3 square meals a day. That'd be all right by me. So, is there anything else you want to chime in on that, Casper?
No, I think that's fantastic, actually. I think you nailed it down pretty good.
All right. Hey, nice change of pace. Let's get back to you, because again, you were the figurative workhorse in the office this week. You have another fantastic story talking about this trauma and grief presentation. I mean, you're really hitting it the in-depth this week. Walk us through this the informal event that's going to be happening here. Like I said, I had no idea about this, so you're going to have to educate me on this as well.
Yes, for sure. So this is a event being put on by Malice for Mental Health. As people may be aware, they do a lot of work within the community to get resources out there for people who need it in terms of mental health, get programs out there like the struggling to remember the exact name of it off the top of my head here, but that Mothers program at Arts Forward, which I believe is actually starting up again this year very soon, or it has already, and other things like that. And this time they are planning on hosting a presentation on trauma and grief. They are bringing in actually a retired police officer who is now a social worker via private practice. And I apologize if I mispronounced the last name here, but it's Susan Rabichuk. She's done a lot of work, Diane Martin told me, a board member for Malice for Mental Health. She's done a lot of work with communities like Carberry. Of course, everyone's aware of the unfortunate tragedy that's happened most recently, that crash, and has worked with the community through that and some other incidences as well, people in the area on that sort of thing. And so Claire McCannell, actually it was, who is also involved with Malice for Mental Health, knows Susan very well, and it was actually her idea to reach out and bring her here for this. So the plan is to have her here on October 26th. Again, very informal evening. Just invite people out there, listen to Susan speak a little bit, provide some of her experience, most likely her life experience and expertise, and answer some questions. People will be able to pose their questions if they so desire, or even just present them anonymously. They'll have some options there for that, which you can read about in the story.
Very glad to see that something like this, something that maybe usually occurs in a larger metropolitan center, is coming to our community. So if it's something you'd be interested in learning a little bit more about and maybe even participating in, you can find that information. Casper's got it in this week's edition of the Banner Press. We got a few minutes left here, so we're just going to chime in with a little bit. I know you're probably sick of it, but one last little kick at the can in terms of politics and the most recent provincial election. Casper was able to get track down an opportunity to speak with Greg Nesbitt of, Riding Mountain. He has been re-elected as the MLA for Riding Mountain, and he shared some of his thoughts and perspectives on this election, on the vote of confidence he received from his constituents, and also the change in perspective he's going to have. He was part of the progressive conservatives who were running the show the last few years, but now he will be part of the official opposition with the conservatives, as the NDP did win the majority. And that segues actually nicely into Ken Waddell's column this week. He does sort of a post-operative sort of exploration of the provincial election and what maybe went wrong for the progressive conservatives. I'm not going to paraphrase too much about what he thinks happened with it. That's why you got to pick up a copy of the Banner Press and read it for yourself. I'm just going to chime in. I'm going to get you to chime in as well quickly, Casper, as well, just to get your opinion on why you think they failed. For myself, I think it was the messaging, most importantly. There was a lot that they did that in figurative sense shot themselves in the foot. The NDP, for the most part, just had to wipe their hands and just stay back and say, hey, you guys keep doing what you're doing. You are helping us out a lot with their messaging on hospitals, healthcare, and obviously the landfill situation. No matter what side of the argument you are on, you have to agree that their process and their public sort of thought process on that really did turn off the average voter. That's the thing most people never get. I mean, most people are very, very much on their side or their other side, and they never think about the average Joe or Jane who doesn't think about elections or politics until 5 minutes before they vote. So I think they lost a lot of those people with their messaging. But again, that's my opinion. It's not the opinion of the Banner and Press. It's not the opinion of NACTV. It's just mine. I could be wrong. I have been before, and I will again. Well, let me get your take on the election. What did you think happened that put the NDP over the top and put the PCs where they're at?
That's a good question. I think very much along the lines of what you said, actually, is because I agree. I didn't see too much of the campaign messaging just because, once I'm out of the office, I'm like, out of the office. That's my time to, as much as possible, for the most part, to sort of unplug from news and whatnot, but, try and still keep up here and there with things that are important, like the election. And, just with the services our family is using right now for TV and whatnot, we don't really get a whole lot of the election ads as you normally would with cable, etc. But yeah, I was surprised definitely by some of the messaging, specifically from the PCs. Of course, the hot topic was, and understandably so, I suppose, the landfill, as you mentioned. I was just shocked that the PCs decided to, I guess, put that messaging out there while they were trying to secure votes. I know some people, maybe because of a pure financial standpoint,
right,
would be like, okay, yeah, maybe that secured a vote in that aspect. But I don't know, for me, that just would totally turn me off from any party that put that kind of message out there during campaign. It
felt a little like a preaching to the choir type thing?
I guess so, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, that's just our opinions on that. So we'd love to hear your opinions, obviously. So whenever you get a chance, send us a letter on your thoughts on any of these topics. And if you have any story ideas, send them to us. Always appreciate them at news@neepawabanner.com. It's always appreciated. Or you can get in touch with us via phone at 476-3401. Once again, we try and hit as many different story ideas as we can. We always appreciate when you get in touch with us and share those stories with us. So once again, Casper, great to have you here. Thank you for stepping in as always and stepping up in this week's edition.
Absolutely. Great to be here once again and looking forward to the next one.
And thank you for tuning in always to NAC TV and the story behind the stories. Have another fantastic week.